You know, many times we hear many things come from people of religious backgrounds, and the latest things that we've heard, the latest thing to come up on the scene really, is who the Gentiles are. Many of us think that because we've been told by Christians that we are Gentiles, many of us think that we are Gentiles, and because they have in Webster's Encyclopedia that a Gentile is a non-Jew, then truly a lot of us think that we are Gentiles. But when you really read Scripture and find out some things about Scripture, you find out that black folks being Gentiles is one of the biggest lies that's ever been told. It's just like saying that we are Africans. No, we are not. We're the Hebrew Israelites, Yahweh's chosen people, and that was another big lie that has been told our people. So it takes a lot of research so that you can understand who the nations are. This way, you know exactly who was talking to who about what in the Scripture. Many times things are said, and people read that as if it's talking to everyone, but it's not. It's basically talking to the people that that specific letter was written to. And to show you this, let me read something that Paul had to say. Now, we know that when Paul came up, during Paul's time, Paul was sent among the Euro-Gentiles. Now, we know that. Now, in order to understand that, what you have to do is you have to go back up in the book of Genesis, in the 10th chapter of Genesis, and see who Noah's three sons were. One inherited Africa, Ham, and then we had Shem, who inherited the Middle East, and Japheth, who inherited Europe and Asia. And when you look up the names of those sons in the biblical concordance, you'll find out that all of the children of Japheth were Germans and Russians and Asians and the Europeans, even these transplanted people here over in America who came here from Europe, they were the Gentiles. But I tell you what I like to do. What I like to do is I like to see who Paul was actually sent to and where Paul went. See, if everybody was Gentiles, why didn't Paul go to Africa? Why didn't Paul go to the Middle East? The only place that Paul went was up in Europe and Asia and taught the people in Europe and Asia. As a matter of fact, when you get in the book of Revelations, you'll find out that all of the churches that was addressed in the book of Revelation are in what they call Europe today, because the people were the Gentiles and they were Europeans. That's who the Gentiles are, the Europeans. But let me read something to you out of the book of Acts. I'm going into Acts chapter 9, and I'm going to read some things to you out of Acts chapter 9 that was said to Paul. When the Messiah asked Paul why did he persecute him, in verse 15 he said, "But the Adonai said unto him, Go your way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name." Well, we know that where Paul went was in Europe. And to show you that, Paul wrote letters to the 7 churches, and I'd like to read something to you that he had pertaining to where these churches were, so you get a good understanding as to who the Gentiles were that Paul was sent to. This is Revelation chapter 1 and verse 11. Verse 10 rather said, "I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet, saying, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And what you see, write in the book and send it to the 7 churches which are in Asia, into Ephesus, into Smyrna, into Pergamos, unto Thyatira, unto Sardis, and unto Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea." Well, when you look up these places, you find out that all these churches were set up in Rome, in the Roman Empire, what we call today Europe. Now, let's go a little further with this. I'm going to go into Ephesians and read some things here out of Ephesians that Paul had to say to the Ephesians. This is in Ephesians chapter 3, and I'm going to read verse 1 through verse 8. It says, "For this cause I, Paul, the prisoner of Yahshua, for the Gentiles, if you have heard of the dispensation of grace of Elohim, which was given unto me toward you, how that by revelation he made known unto me the mystery, as I wrote afore in a few words, whereby, when you read, you may understand my knowledge of this mystery of Christ, which in other ages was not able to be made known among the sons of men, as it is now revealed unto his holy apostles by the prophets of the Scripture, that the Gentiles should be fellow heirs and of the same body, and partakers of the promise of Christ by the gospel. Wherefore I am made a minister according to the gift of the grace of Elohim given unto me by the effectual working of his power. Unto me, who am less than the least of all saints, is this grace given, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable words of Christ. Well, like I said before, when you check and see where Paul went in his teaching, Paul went to Europe, he went to Colossae, he went to many, many places that's in Europe today and taught among the Europeans who inherited those lands. Now, I'd like to back up a little bit and deal with some things that come out of the prophet Daniel pertaining to some things that was going to take place around the time that the Messiah come, even before the time that the Messiah come, pertaining to the first kingdoms that were set upon the earth. Now this would take place in 606 BC, and I'm going to start this at Daniel chapter 7 and verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, which is Iraq, Daniel had a dream and vision of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, and four beasts came up from the sea, different one from the other. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings there were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon his feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to him. Well, history proves, and further reading in Daniel, the earlier chapter of Daniel, proves that this is the Babylonian Empire that came up on the earth in 606 BC with the Arabs. Now we know that the Arabs were not called Gentiles, they were called Babylonians. Verse 5, and behold another beast, a second like unto a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and had three ribs in the mouth of it, and between the teeth of it, and they said unto it, arise, and devour much flesh. So we know that this was the Medo-Persian Empire that came up on the earth in 539 BC. So we see that Darius, the Russian, was the first Gentile to actually rule the earth, and that started in 539 BC. Then in verse 5 it says, verse 6 it says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast also had four heads, and dominion was given unto it. Well, this was the kingdom of Alexander the Great, and after Alexander the Great died, his kingdom was divided up among his four generals, which divided the earth up in quarters for the first time. But what we are talking about here, we are still talking about Europeans. Now in verse 7 it says, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Well, this was the Roman Empire that came upon and began to rule the earth in 63 BCE, and Rome fell in 476 AD, and they divided the earth among all of the people of the earth except this so-called renamed Negro that they dropped through the cracks of history. So as we begin to see, the Gentiles are not all of the people on the earth. The Gentiles happen to be the Europeans, and when you look upon the earth today, these transplanted Europeans here in America and the people in Europe, they are putting things together in that Middle East now to spread democracy which is Christianity, into that Middle East, and the Arabs are not going to have any of it. And this is the reason why they're doing so much fighting in the Middle East, in that hot spot, because of the fact that Christians are trying to set up a democracy all over the earth, and we know that a democracy is nothing but a broken down republic, and the earth always did better when one man ruled the earth. But let me read something to you here out of the prophet Joel, and see what Joel had to say just before the Messiah came unto this earth. I'm going in Joel chapter 3, and I'm going to start this at verse 1. It says, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people, and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they may drink." Verse 6 says, "The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold also into the Grecians, that you might move them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them up out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head." Verse 9, "Proclaim this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourself together round about. There cause your mighty one to come down, O Yahweh. Let the heathen be awakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about." Verse 14, "Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion, and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heaven and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people, and the strength of the children of Israel." The thing of it is, when we look upon the earth today, the power of the earth is controlled by Europe and America and Russia, who are Gentiles. And we know from Genesis 10 that these were the people that were called Gentiles, but today the church tried to make everybody be Gentiles, and they're not. It's one of the biggest lies that has ever been told. Now let me go into the prophet Zechariah chapter 1, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 18. "Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, What be these? And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. And Yahweh showed me 4 carpenters. Then said I, What came these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, not Israel and Jerusalem, but these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horn of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah, to scatter it." Well, we know that according to history, it was the Romans. General Titus, that was the one that invaded Jerusalem in 70 A.D., and between 70 and 100 A.D., Judah was sold to the Africans, who in turn sold our people to the Euro-Gentiles as slaves over here in the Americas. Let me read a little bit further on this. I'm going to pick this up at verse 8. It said, "For thus said Yahweh of hosts, After the glory hath he sent me to the nations which spoil you. For he that touched you touched the apple of his eye. For behold, I will shake my hand upon them, and they shall be for a spoil to their servants. And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for look, I come and will dwell in the midst of you. And many nations shall be joined unto the Lord, and that day shall be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of you. And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me, and the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall yet choose Jerusalem. Be silent, O all flesh, before Yahweh, for he is raised up out of his holy habitation. Now, when you read the second chapter of Daniel, you find out in the second chapter of Daniel that the Gentiles was given 2,520 years to rule the earth. And the first Gentile to rule the earth was the Russians and the Iranians in 539 BC. So time came down from 539 to 1, and then it started and came back up to 2000. So you can very well see, 2006 rather, so you can very well see that we are at right at 2,555 years that the Gentiles was given to rule the earth. This is why the earth is all in decay. And when you look on the earth today, look over in the Middle East and see it is who's doing all the fighting. Look at it, look and see who it is every time a problem arises with other nations. What happened? America, Global Cop, the hammer of the whole earth is the nation that tried to go over and put these things down. Why? Because these are the Gentiles. And the Gentiles was given 2,520 years to rule the earth. And believe me, it's the strap that Lucifer is using in these final days. After the flood, we understand that the Africans of Ham ruled the earth up until 606 BC, when the Arabs, who are the Antichrist, came in and they took over from the Africans. And then in 539 BC, this is when the Euro-Gentiles came out of Europe and invaded the Middle East, and ever since then, the Euro-Gentiles has been ruling the whole earth, and they have been destroying all of the ecosystems of the earth and devouring all of the natural resources on the earth for personal gain. And the earth was created for all man, but yet and still, it's the Gentiles who owns most of the earth, and it's the Gentiles who control all of the wealth on the earth. If you don't buy from the Gentiles, you do not buy at all, because the Gentiles are the one who set up the world banks. They're the one that control the world markets, and they are the ones who control all of the power upon this earth today, especially all of the nuclear energy. This is why they're raising so much sand about Iran bringing together, putting together a nuclear bomb. We can understand that Iran is part of the Shemitic nation that inherited the Middle East, and they do not want the Arabs or the people in the Middle East to have any nuclear power. However, the land of Israel has nuclear power. Even North Korea have nuclear power. But North Korea is part of the Gentile nations. The Asians and the Gentiles in Europe and Asia are brothers and sisters. So as we can very well see, there has been a lie that has been told as to who the Gentiles are. And if you think you're a Gentile, then you're in for a big surprise, because we read in the prophet Zechariah that Yahweh had called the Gentiles to war. He said, wake up the mighty men, bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. And when you look over in Europe today, the nations are putting together a new world order. It's called the EU. It's the revived Holy Roman Empire that fell in 476 AD. And believe me, all of the nations, 99% of the nations that are part of that are Euro-Gentiles that has joined this nation, because they're trying to put the Holy Roman Empire back together again, because man knows that the earth always did better when you have one man to rule the earth. And when you get in Revelation chapter 13 and Revelation 17, where it talks about this last empire and this last religious that's going to be up on the earth, you find out that the empire is the Roman Empire, and the last religion that's going to be upon the earth is Christianity, which got its start with the Roman Catholic Church. And today, she's on another crusade all over the earth, trying to put all of the earth under the umbrella of democracy. And the next step from democracy is Christianity. This is why you have so many people in Lebanon, so many Christian people in Lebanon today. But if you look, they're all Gentiles, and they're being evacuated from Lebanon and being brought back to the state simply because of the war that's going on in the Middle East. And this war, this last war, is going to be a war between the Christians and the Muslims, because these Gentiles has got to stamp what they call Islam out of the face of the earth, because they have they're too uncontrolled, they have too many terrorist cells that's running around blowing up people in all countries. This is why they have to be destroyed. So don't be deceived that you are a Gentile. All you have to do is look and see where Paul went. And Paul went all over Europe and Asia. And when you read the earlier chapters of Revelation, you can very well see that the places he went to are truly in Europe. This is why our people had so many problems with Paul, because our people didn't want Paul to go and teach the Gentiles anything. And the mystery in the Old Testament was not that Yahweh was going to save the nation. The mystery of how was how they were going to be saved. And the way that they was going to be saved was that they had to come through the nation of Israel. This is why all the apostles that went out to teach anybody were of Hebrew Israelites, and the people that wrote the Holy Scrolls and the epistles in the New Testament, they were Hebrew Israelites. The problem is, we've been taught by the Gentiles a religion called Christianity. But Christ said, salvation is of the Jews. And the prophet Zechariah, let me read something to you that the prophet Zechariah had to say about what's going to take place once the Messiah returns and set up his kingdom. This is Zechariah chapter 8, and I'm going to start this at verse 20. Thus saith Yahweh's host, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people, and the inhabitants of many cities. And the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go speedily to pray before Yahweh and to seek Yahweh of hosts. I will go also. Yes, many people and strong nations shall come to seek Yahweh of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yahweh. He's not talking about in heaven now. He's talking about Jerusalem, Israel. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the language of the nation, shall even take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, because we have heard that God is with you. So these are the things that were said by the prophets. This is the reason why in the church today, they don't read the prophets to find out what's going to take place. Everybody's using scare tactics out of the book of Revelation and using a false religion that the Messiah, neither one of the apostles were. Just because the apostles were called Christians does not mean that they were. And when you read the 21st chapter of Acts, long after the apostles were called Christians, Paul said that he was a Jew of Tarsus, not by his nationality. He was a Hebrew Israelite by his nationality, but because of his religious practices, he was a Jew. So stop listening to what people say. Read your own book. Do your own study like the scripture says. Study to show yourself approved. And if you run into any problems, what you can do is you can check our website. It's thencci.com. That's www.thencci.com. And you can